Next up, for our second lovely guest of the first ever OS Talk event, where we are themed all around overcoming obstacles, xootynator, a very prevalent member of the community, very well-renowned player from the lovely country of Canada, and also rising star or most improved
Oh,
player of OS World Cup last year. So many accomplishments under your belt, and today you will be discussing your approach to training specific weaknesses, as you labeled your talk as left-hand training, which to get everyone on the same page, that is referring to the tapping hand. So yes, without any further ado, thank you all for being here.
yeah, I'm good to go. Oh, he's gone. Well, yeah, hello again, everybody. Nice to be here. I think this is pretty much my third time doing one of these kind of talks. I guess the first one was an interview with Habib. But here I am. Yeah, I am going to be talking about my approach to. I didn't want to call it a speed talk because this is not meant to be like, oh, I'm a speed player and I'm going to give you speed advice. It's more so going to be how I kind of broke this physical and almost mental barrier to start better approaching the skill set, which is speed and stamina. Now, if you have known anything about me in the past couple of years or whatever, if you don't know me too, I'm kind of infamously known for having a lack of stamina and speed. And it's something that's really brought me down, especially in tournament play, because when I am faced with, tough opponents that are pretty well rounded, it's something that I really suffer on things like Nomad 2, like stream maps, and obviously DT's speed maps and stuff like that. So what I've been trying to do, I guess pretty much for this year, but definitely in the past month, I've been focusing way more on it, was to reduce the inconsistencies in my playstyle, I would say, because I know that the left hand, which for me is my tapping hand, is something that can be trained and can be improved upon. So I'm pretty much going to be talking about what I've done in my approach to kind of break down this problem that I had in order to improve. So just going to say again, this is not a speed talk necessarily. It's not going to make you better at speed. But I'm just going to talk about different methods that I've learned from talking to different people, and maybe someone will learn a thing or two or hear something that they haven't tried before. So I'm going to kind of split this up into two different things, which would be the mechanics versus the mentality portion. And I feel like you can separate these two into like any single skill set that you're trying to learn. There's obviously fundamentals to the mechanics, but you have to have the right mentality and mindset to be able to explore the skill set and build upon it. So in terms of mechanics, there's obviously like really basic things like pushing your limits and just training a lot, because for your tapping hand, it's literally a muscle. Like you can compare it to running a marathon, right? You can't run a marathon all at once. You really have to train it because you have to make it strong. But something that I didn't try for a while, and once I started doing it, I noticed a pretty significant improvement right away, was experimenting with my form. So what I did for a long time was I looked at people's streams, pretty much people that I looked up to in their tapping ability, and I looked at their form, like what keys they were using, where their keyboard was placed. Like, not so much that I asked them what they were doing, but I was just observing how their form was different than mine. And I think this was specifically good for me because back in the day, I used to play on a laptop keyboard, and I was obviously an aim one trick. And I think I developed some really bad form habits in terms of tapping. One of the biggest things that I did before was wiggling my wrist a lot instead of actually using my fingers to play. Where I think all your horsepower should pretty much come from your fingers. You don't want to use the momentum from your wrist wiggling back and forth to kind of cheese through streams. It's something that Xylus really pushed on me, actually, was to just play as if it was just my fingers moving and not any outside source. So what I did eventually was I talked about it on Twitter, you might have seen, but I adopted partially the Cookie Z tapping style where he kind of anchors his thumb on his index finger. And I found that that was helping me reduce the wiggle in my wrist because a lot of it was coming from my thumb actually sticking out really far and I was just like wiggling it uncontrollably pretty much. So that's about the experimenting with my forearm. So I felt like that helped me. But obviously it didn't just give me unlocked stamina forever. I wish. But moving on, in my next point for the mechanics was more so something that I just learned after talking to some speed players, but your left hand should kind of be on autopilot mentally as an accessory to your right hand. And again, I talked about this with Silas on his stream as well. But if you're thinking about your left hand so much, obviously you're going to be straining it, when in reality you should be focusing on your aim and your left hand should be fully capable of just doing whatever stream pattern or stamina pattern that it wants to do. And I realized every single time I was thinking about my left hand, I would tense up so bad. Now, this is where some weird tips come in. Like, I don't know if you guys saw the White Cat tweet about how he said he focuses on his like toes when he's tapping or something. But like, if you can distract your mind from constantly thinking about, oh, like the stream's coming up, the stamina part's coming up, and just kind of let your muscle memory do the work, I think you're going to find that you're gonna strain yourself a lot less. And truly, there's kind of this running joke, especially with Devious Panda maps. If you think about that style of mapping, where these high level finger control maps are just speed maps, well, it's because high level speed players just have complete finger control, right? They can just do things without needing to think about them so much. So, kind of separating this in your mind, I think, is something that helped me a lot in the mechanics side. So those are just random tips that I've come across, but I think one of the biggest things that was stopping me from pursuing the skill set was mentality, which is what I'm going to talk about a little bit. Because when you're someone like me that's 2-digit, and Habib was saying earlier, like, oh, most improved player of ODBC, like I have a bunch of these titles or whatever that makes me think that I should be so good at everything. But I had this mental barrier that almost didn't want me to be bad at tapping and be bad at stamina and be bad at streams, because it's really demotivating when you're at this rank, obviously, and you look at the people around you and they're fully capable of doing something that's pretty much so simple but seems so hard for you. And recently, I guess within the past month or so, when I literally just put on no fail and was just playing to the ends of songs, getting like 80% accuracy, just playing to the very end and letting myself be bad, I noticed like a big change in my mentality. Excuse me. And after I kept doing that over and over again, it started just to become easier and easier because, of course, I was developing that finger control and I was developing just that muscle memory that was letting me do these things. And that's where the practice comes in, right? Like, you have to put the hours in to train your hand and train your muscles. But the main point of that is that I wasn't letting myself be bad. Like, my speed is like 4 or 5 digit, and I wanted to make myself pretend that I could play speed at a 2-digit level, when in reality I can't, until I both unlearned the bad habits that I learned back in the day and just practice my heart out to get better. And I think slowly I am getting better. And I think if you've seen my tournament play recently, I think it shows a little bit. So I also wrote down here that learning becomes rewarding after you break this mental barrier, after you start doing things that you really couldn't. And for me, it really felt like a brick wall. Like, I just could not do something, right? And slowly I was chipping away at it. I was trying new things. I was changing my mentality. And like now I feel like I can play stamina maps and play stream maps, and it's rewarding rather than demotivating. Like it's rewarding in a sense that I feel like I'm improving no matter how slow. Just a sip of water. So one of the things, another thing that I've noticed is that when I'm kind of, I talked earlier about looking at people's forums and hearing what people have to say about how they tackled certain subjects, how they solved certain problems in their playstyle. And I've learned like a million bajillion things. I've heard so many things. And truthfully, there could be nothing that like someone could tell you like this is exactly how I got good at speed, this is exactly what you should do, and maybe it just won't work for you. And I spent a long time just thinking about all these things in the back of my mind and thinking about what people do and trying to figure out ways where I could help it apply to myself and help myself get better rather than me trying to emulate what they were doing, right? I was taking little sources of information from other people and trying to implement it into my playstyle and finally eventually get better and find out what was good for me. Pretty much. I was finding what my specific weaknesses were in order to tackle them, like my lack of finger control and my lack of form and just lack of practice overall, especially with the mentality portion. And there's some good tips out there. I know a lot of people have posted videos about tapping and about speed, which you should give a watch even if you don't think that you'll learn anything. Like some of the most or one of the most interesting tips that I've gotten was something that Bubbleman said, and I've seen Bubbleman do in practice, was play really low BPM stream maps like 160, 150, and just focus on your finger control rather than the speed aspect, which I think is really interesting. There's also things like going on YouTube, and there's I don't know exactly what they're called, but it's piano hand exercises, and it's basically meant to kind of connect your brain to your fingers and make them do exactly what you want to do. And I think the main thing for me after all that, after the mechanics and the mentality, was that I finally found the fun in this skill set, and it felt like eventually something that I wanted to work towards. And of course, you know, if you have fun doing something, you're gonna want to keep doing it. So I eventually got there, and I'm still training to this day. And I don't know when it's gonna, you know, fully pay off, but it definitely does feel rewarding, and I feel glad that I am pursuing the skill set finally, even though I'm whatever rank. So overall, to wrap up my little talk is yeah, I've definitely seen improvement in myself, and that's the only person you can look for really for guidance and for what is the word, affirmation, I guess. I think I'm improving, and thankfully there's people around me that were always helping me with tips and encouraging me to learn. And if you have those people in your life, then that is awesome, and you should not take that for granted. And eventually, after literal months, I think, of agony and whatever, maps bringing me to tears, like using all these tips or whatever, I finally am able to push through and learn the skill set. And that is my little talk. And maybe you learned something, and if you did, that is awesome, because a lot of this is coming from a definitely non-speedy player. So yeah. And I guess if you guys have any questions too, then I will be lurking in that little community talks thread, and I will try to answer anything. But yeah, thank you for listening, guys.